obviously, ideally, you would have both. But, you know, if you have to choose between safety and passion, which one is more important and which one can, you know, be added on later? Okay, let's do it. Hi y'all, we're Kelly and Julie and we're here to find love. We're coming at you with another Bachelorette recap video. Today we're talking about Michelle's fantasy suites and we finally have our top 2 finalists for Michelle Young's season. So we're going to be diving in and talking about these 2 guys, Brandon and Nate, and what we think about them and their potential relationships with Michelle. We'll also talk about Joe, who ended up going home this week, and why we think he went home, and what we think is coming up in our season finale. We know we have so many new subscribers here. Welcome to Here to Find Love. We are so excited that you're all here. If you're new and aren't subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We post Bachelor and Bachelorette recap videos every week and cover every season. So subscribe to our channel and let's keep this conversation going. It's gonna be a fun season finale for Michelle, and we are excited to dive into Clayton's season in the new year.
Yeah, we are. So before we dive into this video, just a reminder that as we're talking about all of these top 3 guys and Michelle, we don't know anything about them. This is just a 2-hour snapshot we're getting of like their 1 to 2 month, you know, Bachelorette experience. All we're noticing is that they happen to represent or speak to contemporary dating themes that we're seeing. So we're using the contestants and Michelle's love story with them as a way to talk about these larger themes, but we're not doing it as a way to judge anyone. We all love these 3 men. And we're noticing as dating coaches is that there are certain things that are coming up that we just want to speak about, but it may not necessarily represent the relationship as a whole. We know nothing about them. It's just something that me and Kelly are observing and we're bringing to your attention just to kind of spark a conversation around these things that a lot of single people are navigating as they try to find love out there.
Right. You know, Julie and I, just like you all, we don't know Nate, Michelle, Joe.
We know nothing.
Brandon. We don't know them personally, just like y'all don't know them personally. I mean, we're just here. We know only what we've seen on this television show, and we're just using this television show as a jumping off point to inspire dialogue about dating and about relationships and all these tricky dynamics that can come up in them. And, you know, so as far as comments, I know people are going to have really strong opinions about who they think Michelle should end up with. We want this whole community of Here to Find Love, we want this to be a place for us to just come together, discuss this TV show that we all love and enjoy, share ideas, and just learn from each other. So we ask that everyone can come into the comments and, you know, approach each other with a spirit of generosity, approach us and the other contestants with a spirit of generosity. We can disagree peacefully, and that's how we learn from each other. So we'll leave you all with that little food for thought. Please do drop some comments down below, and let's dive into this video.
Let's start off with Joe first, because Joe, really sad to see him go home. And I also thought that he showed off his personality this episode, which was hilarious. I love that he was so like adventurous and energetic during the zip lining. And I also loved that he was the only one that was really commenting on how awkward the entire situation was, like where, you know, people would go to the overnight dates and he would just be sitting there on the couch. I thought it was so funny how he was calling that out and he was bringing it to attention, because Brandon was just like jealous. He was just jealous. He had no other emotion, and Nate was like Mr. Cool, leaning back. So I loved seeing Joe's personality. I'm really sad to see him go home, because I do think that, like, out of all of these contestants, personally, they realistically would make a really fine match. I think they would have, for sure, had like a really nice, happy, grounded, compatible life together. But what did you think about just his arc on the show, of his emotions, and like what it was like when Michelle sent him home? Because a lot of people were very surprised.
Yeah. Well, Joe was kind of a front runner since the beginning of the season, and I think a lot of people thought the top two was going to be Nayte and Joe. And so I think a lot of people were very, very shocked to see that it's actually going to be Nayte and Brandon. And, I think with Joe, for me, even though on that date he was opening up so much, I felt that this date clarified, at least for me, how each relationship is in comparison to, Brandon's date was right before Joe's, and on Brandon's date, Brandon was just it felt like his relationship with Michelle was so like several steps ahead of where Joe's relationship with Michelle was. It felt like Brandon was just very like, he knew exactly how he felt about her. He was super direct about it. And, like they were essentially behaving like boyfriend and girlfriend already on that date, or life partners, right? In comparison to on Joe's date, even though they seemed to have a good time, and you could really see that Joe was opening up so much in comparison to the past, it just felt like their relationship and their dynamic was just so just like a couple steps behind where Brandon's was. And I think that was probably sinking in for Michelle, that whereas she could just like run up and kiss, Nayte and Brandon, with Joe, there was like a little bit more of like a, what are we doing here? Or a little bit more of like a, we're still figuring it out kind of vibe. And that doesn't mean that they weren't a good relationship. I just don't think that they were as far along as Brandon and Nayte were. And so to me, when I saw that date, I did kind of get a sense of, I think it's going to be Joe who goes home. And I hadn't felt that way until this episode, all the way up until now. I mean, we all know I did not see the Brandon thing coming. So I had also thought it would be Joe in the top two with Nayte.
Right.
So I had been surprised that Brandon had made it all the way this far. But after this date in particular, I was like, I just don't think that she's as far along with Joe as I think everyone kind of assumed that she was.
That's a great point, because on Brandon's date and with Nayte's date, it was very clear that she had told them both, like she gave them the validation that they were seeking. I'm falling for you. And not just falling, she used the L word. She said love.
Big
Whereas
L
I
word.
felt like with Joe, she was a little bit more like, there was like this sense of interrogation of like, what could this be? Like, I'm looking for this sense of clarity. And even though like, I do think that Joe and her could get there. Could they get there in the structure of the show? Probably not. Not as fast as like Nayte and Brandon have expedited that. So I do think, I mean, it was very disappointing. It was heartbreaking to see her say like, I think a piece of my heart will always be with you in some way, because it shows that she has an amazing and very strong connection of all three of these men. But she is choosing her love story, and her love story, she wants it to be very romantic, which is completely warranted. So that leads us into, should we talk about Brandon or should we talk about Nayte?
Well, I think that it's hard to talk about them separately because they're so
intertwined.
Yeah, and they're like kind of such in opposite positions, and the things that one person, like the relationship with Brandon, what that relationship has is kind of what the relationship with Nayte is missing, and vice versa. So in a lot of ways, once I realized that these were the top two, and once I saw Brandon's one-on-one date and Nayte's one-on-one date, and what they talked about, what Michelle talked about with each of these guys, the thing that kind of stuck out to me is, each of these relationships represent something different. With Brandon, that relationship represents safety and security, right? Because Michelle really knows, it is so clear that Brandon really wants to commit to her, and that he really wants to be 100%, 1000% all in with her. And that relationship it has that safety that I think everyone wants. Everyone wants to feel secure in their relationship and feel like they know exactly where their partner stands with them. And Brandon can give that to her 110%. And so I think that is very alluring, and that is something that is so important for relationships to have. Now, then you have the Nayte relationship, who I think he represents more passion, right? Passion and excitement and like romance, like capital R romance, in the sense of he's kind of this dream guy, this dreamboat. He's so handsome and charming, and you can tell Michelle just like gets butterflies around him, and there's like a kind of thrill to that relationship.
Yeah.
But there isn't quite the safety of Brandon. And likewise with Brandon, there's safety, but maybe not the same amount of passion and thrill that there is with Nayte. And I think it begs the question of like, which is more important in a relationship? Which one do you need? And then, hope the other one can come. Obviously, ideally, you would have both. But, if you have to choose between safety and passion, which one is more important and which one can, be added on later? It was a really interesting dynamic to see playing out. And I'm going to be really interested to see what Michelle ends up choosing. But what are your thoughts, Julie?
I felt the same way when I was watching it too. When I was watching the date of Brandon, I felt excited for Brandon. When I was watching her date with Nayte, I felt excited for Michelle. Like, it was a different type of like when I saw Brandon, I was like, God, he loves her. That's so lovely to see. And then when she was with Nayte, I was like, I'm so excited she's getting to see him because she obviously wants to see him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the difference because like, how many times have we been in this situation? We've been with the person that is so into us. They're so lovely. They're telling us exactly what we want, but there's a little bit of like,
something.
That like little pizzazz, that little bit of a sparkle of like, you want that gamified. It's not like you want that gamified feeling, but we're taught to look for that. We're taught to look for like this really high relationship. And Brandon is just like, consistently giving her the affirmations that she needs. She doesn't really need a second guess how she feels with him. So I do think there's an element of like not taking advantage of that, but taking it for granted almost, because you just know that Brandon is there. And he said that before the rose ceremony.
Right.
Like, I love you and I want to be there for you regardless of what happens, because his love for her transcends this need to like have an engagement. He just loves her purely. Whereas I think with Nayte just kind of represents, like, I have said this throughout the entire season, I think Nayte has this secure attachment. I think that it's very attractive that he's very in his body when she's developing connections with other people. He doesn't get jealous. He's like very secure and confident in his connection with Michelle. And I don't want to speak about this in terms of like me trying to psychoanalyze Nayte specifically and me trying to dog on him at all. But I do think that Nayte, to me, kind of represents that person that you just have this, you're dating them and you really, really like them, but you have this feeling that you like them more than they like you.
Yeah.
Because they're not so vulnerable. They are telling you all of the things that you want to hear. They're showing all of this affection, but you're still not completely sure. Like, you're kind of the one wanting to escalate the relationship a little bit further. Michelle was the one that was like, are you falling in love with me?
Yeah.
Like, Nayte was the one that was, oh, okay, that's a lot to unpack. I wasn't even thinking about that. So that to me was just a little bit like, is this going to be their dynamic where Michelle is pushing for more and maybe Nayte wants those things, but he's never going to be the instigator for those things. He might go along with it because he does love Michelle. But what kind of dynamic are you looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really well said. I was a little, like, watching that dinner scene between Michelle and Nayte, I was a little bit concerned because it did feel like she had to kind of coax it out of him almost, like coax the confession of love out of him. And, when she sat down, she was like, do you feel like we have a lot to talk about? And he was like, no, I'm just vibing. Like, and she was like, oh, like, I have so much on my mind. And I do think that that's probably indicative of just the way they both approach relationships. Nayte has said this in the past. He's like, I don't like to just always be talking about serious stuff and always have to like talk about the relationship. He has said that to Michelle before, versus I think Michelle is just the type of person who likes to be a little meta and like talk about what is going on between someone and not just be in the vibe. And like, I think a little bit of both is important. Obviously you want to be present in the relationship, but it can't be at the expense of, making sure that you're both moving toward what you want, right? Which is where Michelle is kind of at. And considering that there's an engagement in theory a week away from now, the fact that Nate didn't even occur to him, that we probably have a lot to talk about, because if we're going to get engaged next week, there's probably a lot of things we should discuss.
Right.
The fact that that didn't really occur to him just shows that maybe him and Michelle just really do have different approaches to relationships. And, you know, I could see in the future exactly what you're saying, this dynamic where Michelle is kind of always the one who has to bring to attention, you know, issues in the relationships, or like bring to attention, like, hey, like, is our relationship moving forward? And I can see Nate over time maybe even getting annoyed by that, right? Like, why do we always have to talk about our relationship? Why can't we just like be in the moment and have fun? And like, I can see him maybe eventually, because it's just clearly not native to him to have these types of conversations, you know, regularly, versus for Michelle, it's so important to her to be talking about this openly all the time. So, you know, that was a concern that was coming up for me when I was watching that dinner scene. And, you know, maybe you're right. Maybe that, you know, he loves her enough that he will be willing to engage in this type of dialogue with her regularly. But it's a risk, right? Like, it's like he has told her what he's like, and everyone, including him, is just hoping that in the future it'll be different. He's like, no, I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know what I'm going to feel, but like, I'm hoping it'll be good. Like, that's kind of what he said. And even he couldn't even commit to saying that, no, like, I'm definitely going to keep feeling the way I'm feeling here. He couldn't even commit to saying that. So, you know, it's just a little bit of a risk. Whereas Brandon is like, I am going to put in the work to keep our relationship as strong as it is right now. Nate is a little bit more like, well, we'll see what happens. Like, we can't predict what life is going to throw at us. And like, I don't think I'm going to run away, but like, you know, life is full of risks. And, you know, while that is totally true, it does mean that whereas Brandon is making a commitment, like, no matter what life throws at us, I'm going to put in the work to make this work. Nate is saying like, well, if life throws something at us, like, maybe this won't work out. And like, what are you going to do? And I think that for Michelle, that like a person in Michelle's position, that's probably pretty scary.
It is. And it's like, it also depends on what you prioritize, right? Because when we get into relationships with people, it's very rare that you're always on the same page about everything. There's a negotiation of values, but I do think that there are certain things that you prioritize where it's like, we do parallel this, and it's not a fight for us to talk about certain things, whether that's like where we see our relationship going, or that's our humor, or that's the way that we approach our work. Like, we have this like understanding with each other. So it just depends on how highly Michelle values that, because Brandon can give it to her without any compromise. It's just innate in him to give that to her, and it's innate in her to give that to him, right? But it's like, and it's a little bit difficult too, because with the Nate approach and the Michelle approach, they're both completely valid. There is not a right or a wrong way to do it.
Exactly.
You can't just have a question and live your way into it, like Nate says, or you can have a question about the relationship and plan for it. And make an idea of what you want it to be. Even if it doesn't come true, you still have this like compatible vision that you're building together.
Right.
So it really just does depend on what Michelle values more. I have a suspicion. I mean, Kelly, you and I both put him as the winner for our bracket.
Yeah.
She's going to choose Nate. I can sense it. She loves him. Their chemistry is so, so good. And she's going to break Brandon's heart. I mean, her heart is also going to be broken when she lets him go, because that is really heartbreaking, to let someone go that does want so many of the same things that you want.
Right.
But maybe he's not Nate. Like, and she wants Nate. That she truly just wants him as a person.
Yeah, definitely. I think that she, you know, she just wants it to work with Nate so badly. And, you know, I think, you know, you can't force yourself to choose the guy that's perfect on paper, which I think is what Brandon represents, right? You can't force yourself to choose that guy if you earnestly feel like your heart is being pulled toward another person. And so, I mean, to be honest, for that reason, I do think that she is going to pick Nate. I just don't necessarily know that the relationship will long-term pan out. And, you know, she has to just follow her heart. Obviously, she knows who she feels most connected to. I do think that she's going to choose Nate. I just do question whether or not long-term that relationship can sustain itself given these differences that the two of them have. You know, we can only hope for the best, and Michelle can only follow her heart. That's really all that she can do. And there is a chance that her relationship with Nate will give her this same amount of safety and security in time that the relationship with Brandon is giving her now. But, you know, it's a risk. And I always say, you shouldn't date people for their potential, right? You should date people for who they are now, you know? And I think right now Michelle is just betting on the fact that Nate will be this committed relationship guy in the future. And I think Nate is even betting on that. He's like, I think I'll be this committed relationship guy. Even though I've never been that guy in the past, I think I'll be him in the future. And they're both kind of just betting on, I think, this potential of what could be as opposed to what they are currently. And, you know, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to date essentially this like future vision of someone as opposed to dating who someone is currently. Because, you know, you could end up not actually ending up with that potential fantasy guy. You might end up just with the same guy who's in front of you.
I mean, I think that's beautiful put, and I also agree. I know it's a very controversial opinion because people love Nate and Michelle's love story. I love both of these people's love stories.
Me too.
I love that we're seeing black love on The Bachelorette. I love that we're getting to see that it's working for her. But I do think that as we watch the show, like me and Kelly, we're huge romantics. This is why we're dating coaches. This is why, even though we watch this, like, The Bachelorette, and it's very, like, a lot of drama, at the end of the day, we want people to find their loves. But we are noticing that, like, the show doesn't have a good track record of producing sustainable and long-lasting love stories because it's not couched in realism, because so much of it is about the feelings. So much of it is about the, can you fulfill this fantasy for me? And Nate is a fantasy in a lot of ways. Brandon is also a fantasy. The show itself is a fantasy. Like, you don't date this way typically. You don't date 30 hunks or 30 like babes, you know, and then whittle your way down to the final one and get married. That's not completely realistic. So when we look at these dynamics, that's something that we do have in the back of our mind, because we have worked with people and we know what it takes to like have a relationship that's very fortified. And it does take a lot of hard conversations. I think it's, some of it is like, I love you and I can't do without you, and I love you so much, I'm gonna do this work to make sure that it lasts.
And with Nate,
like, I do think with Nate, they can do the work together for sure, but there's a little bit of an element of them banking on the fact that their connection is so ethereal and it's so lovely that they hope it would just kind of carry them to the next stage and have these conversations, and it's going to be natural. But it's not fun. It's not fun always to build a life with someone, because there are things that you're not going to agree on. So can you love the person enough to like have those conversations with them? And to disappoint them and work on it with them, and to own up to your mistakes, and to do all of the unsexy stuff that a relationship does consist of, or a monogamous relationship leading into marriage, which is what Michelle and Nate and Brandon all say they want. So we're talking about it within that construct. So, like, when we think about it all like that, I just think that with Nate, you're right, there is a little bit more of a hurdle for them to go through. Whereas I think of Brandon, it comes very naturally to him, the same things that Michelle wants. But he's not Nate. So, like...
Exactly. And that's the dilemma here. I think that really is the dilemma. You know, it's funny, Nate is like, will things be the same after this show? I don't know, maybe like you can't predict anything in life, like that's what Nate said, but it's like, the point isn't to predict it. The point is to commit to it and say, like, I'm going to do the work to keep our relationship strong. That I'm going to do the work to make sure that we can continue building this. And it's not about like, let's leave things up to chance. It's like, are you committing to, building a life with this person and doing, whatever it takes. And like, that's what an engagement is, right? That's what, when people say they want to get married, what they're saying is like, because inevitably relationships are not always going to be what Nayte and Michelle have, right? That amazing soulmate spark that they're having right now, this like incredible honeymooning, it's all colliding, stars are like aligning together.
Bursting.
Like, exactly. Like, it's not gonna feel like, every relationship feels like that in the beginning, and it's not going to feel like that forever. And so it's not, will we still have these feelings afterwards? It's inevitably, the answer is going to be eventually, no, it's not going to feel like this forever. And so will you still want to do the work when it doesn't feel like this? And I think that's the question. And, I think even the way Nayte is kind of thinking about it just, suggests that as soon as those like fiery feelings fade, it's likely that he might think, well, the relationship isn't what it was before. So, I guess that means it's not working out. And if that's your attitude about it, then, no relationship is going to work out, because all relationships will have that kind of spike of passion, and then kind of like, then it's up to you two to like do the work day by day. Every relationship is going to take that format.
Yeah. And as you're watching the video, let us know what you think in the comments below. What do you think it takes for a relationship to last outside of the show?
Right.
Let us know what you think below, because we're very curious. We want to also know.
I mean, it's the ethereal question. I think everyone wants to know, what does it take for a relationship to last? What does it take? And, this question of safety versus passion, what do you all think? I think obviously we all want both of these things in any given relationship, right? We all want to feel safe and secure in our relationship, and we all want to feel passion and excitement and thrill. I think we all want that, or most people want that in a relationship. And, which one do you need in the beginning? And then, you can build the rest of it. Like, I think both of them could end up being relationships with both elements, but which one is more important at the beginning of a relationship, I guess? Like, which one is the one that you need to have before you can decide whether you're going to invest?
Passion, I just feel like passion is a little bit of a dime a dozen from my perspective.
Oh my gosh, that is a hot take and I love it.
It's a hot take. I mean, I have
gosh.
because I feel like I can have chemistry with a lot of people. Like, I could talk to a tree trunk and, like, have a chemistry with a tree, But, like, I think it's more so, like, it's more rare for me to feel like I can be myself around you. I can talk to you about these things.
Yeah.
And if I do feel that feeling is not something I'm going to want to let go of. So, like, with the Brandon and Nayte of it all, I mean, I know that I when I first saw Brandon, I really liked him because I liked how romantic he was. But as the episodes have gone on, it's revealed him to be a very sweet person. It seems like it'd be fun to tackle that stuff together with him.
Yeah.
Like, he would love you enough where he would, like, be able to talk to you about these things with a smile on his face and considering you the entire time.
Yeah.
Nayte, I think it'd be a little bit more like I'm walking on eggshells. Like, I want to tell him, but I don't want to push him away. I like him so much. I don't want to do anything to, like, ruin this connection or to create any distance.
Yes.
But that's me. What would you do personally in this situation?
I think you've described my fear about Nayte to a T. Just like this sense of like, whereas Brandon, I don't think you could do anything that would make him change his mind and run off.
Yeah.
Like,
it's kind of lovely.
Which is really, I mean, that's what safety is. It's like you feel really safe to just be able to speak your mind. Versus with Nayte, like, I know he said that he won't run away. I know he said that. And for some reason, just watching the dynamic between Michelle and Nayte, I just don't know if I believe that, They haven't yet had a dynamic where they were at odds with each other, Michelle and Nayte. Will he kind of just, like, get upset and peace out or get upset and feel like, oh, the vibe has changed. We're not vibing anymore. So that must mean the relationship, isn't what I thought it was. Right. And,
right.
That's what I would want to understand more before. And I'm not saying that that's how Nayte would respond. Maybe he wouldn't respond that way at all. Maybe he would be like a totally loving, doting partner and be able to approach, disagreement in a loving way. But I just don't know because we haven't seen it. And so I think that's really what I would want to see more of. And so who would I pick in this situation? I don't know. To be honest, I don't think I would want to date either of these guys, even though they both seem incredible. I just don't necessarily think for Michelle, either of them is the right fit for her. Which is, it's sad to say because, she's so deserving of love and she's clearly such a wonderful partner and such a wonderful person to be in relationship with. And, both of these guys are also wonderful, but just because two people are wonderful doesn't mean that they're compatible, right? Just because two individual people are really great partners, great people, and exciting, that doesn't mean that they're gonna make a good couple. We can only hope for the best. Hopefully there's stuff that we're not seeing because obviously the show is so produced. Like you've said, it's edited and we don't see everything between these contestants. And so hopefully there's more that we haven't seen. And I hope Michelle finds her happy ending here and, proves us wrong. That's what I want. That's my hope for the season.
I would love for Nayte to kind of show up and just be a partner for her. Can they talk about the other things that matter? Like, do they want to have a family after this? Do they want to get married after this? Do they just want to be like a bachelor couple and do like fab, fit, fun sponsorships? What is their whole thing? Like, what do they want from this,
Don't shade fab, fit, fun. What if they want to work with us one day?
I'm not going to shade them. Do they want marriage or do they want to just have fun and be like a couple that's engaged and still explore things? Either option is totally valid.
Michelle and Nayte have all the ingredients of like a perfect relationship, but it just needs more time. So, they can both see over time, how does this relationship work? And,
totally.
The engagement kind of forces their hand in a lot of ways. It kind of forces them to jump into something that they may not be actually ready for, or that may not actually be right for them. And so I think the engagement is kind of forcing their hand a little bit. If they're out in the real world, I would be like, hell yeah, keep dating and see where this goes. And like, let's see if the two of you can keep building this after the honeymoon stage ends. Like, I'd be like, hell yeah, let's see what happens. But, because they have to jump into deciding, are we going to be together forever right now? Like, they have to make that decision. That's kind of why I'm like, well, there's a risk involved here to like try to make that decision right now.
If all of this pressure was taken out of it, then I think Nayte's her person. Nayte is her person 100%. They can date, they can fuck, they can do whatever they want.
The fact that so many of these bachelorette couples break up, all it is, the process, they always say trust the process, but the truth is the process doesn't work. The bachelor process doesn't work. I think, the really awful success rate of couples who come out of this show just shows us that this process doesn't work. And, this is the reason why. It's because it just takes more time to really know if, a Nayte and Michelle relationship that's so full of like electricity and chemistry and excitement, it just takes time to know if that will be able to carry them through a lifetime together. You just can't know based on just that feeling, And so that's the problem with the show. The process is just, it doesn't work for real relationships. So, we'll see what she chooses at the end of the day. And, I think you all know, all y'all watching, like me and Julie, we are Michelle fans. We are Team Michelle all the way. We want her
whoever
to be
Michelle
happy.
Wants,
like
1,000% in her corner.
Exactly. We're in her corner. If she wants to be with Brandon, if she wants to be with Nayte, we are here for her. And that's all we want. We trust that girl and want her to make, want her to find her happy ending. So we'll be watching with bated breath next week, and we will be here to be recapping the season finale.
We will 3 hours next week, Kelly, but we can do it. We can do it. We can watch that freaking finale. Make sure that you subscribe, turn on your notifications so that you can get a hit when me and Kelly release the next video. And this was a big conversation. We want to hear what you guys all think in the comments below, so let us know what thoughts have come up for you as we've discussed this, and we'll talk to you soon.